Hey, Taylor Elwood here, and welcome back to another episode of the Men's Mysteries. And today I'm going to talk a bit more about rechilding and why rechilding is so important for men, especially when it comes to learning how to play again. Now, I think it's a fair statement to say that a lot of men like to play. And how do I know this? Well, I'm a guy, for one thing. For another thing, I see a lot of men who enjoy playing video games, board games, competitive sports, all kinds of different games in general. So this tells me that there is a lot of desire to play. What I find interesting a lot of times is that I'll see that people will demonize men playing. Like, for example, one of the common refrains is men who play video games is that they play video games too much. I've even made that comment sometimes, so I'm not going to pretend I haven't. I have, and yet I also like playing video games. Um, and I do play video games some, not as much as I used to, though. So I think it's interesting because, on the one hand, I think there's a valid point that, for example, some men will get caught up in playing video games and use that as a way to numb themselves. That was me. I spent a lot of my life playing video games, and a lot of times I did it reflexively because it was a way to escape into a different world. But I could also argue the same thing about reading books because when I was a kid, I would read a book. And did I like reading? Yes. But I also read because it was a way for me to escape circumstances that I didn't feel like I had any other way to escape. I even remember it got to a point where when I lived with my mom where she actually ended up talking with a psychologist, and she did something most parents would never think to do. She boxed my books up and put them away because she was worried that I wasn't being social enough with other kids because I would have my nose in a book all the time. And there was some validity to it because in general, I read books and I kept books around me as a safety mechanism. I would have a book in hand no matter where I went. This was a way for me to escape if I needed to. And yet, her approach was actually like the wrong way to go about things because what ended up happening is I ended up getting really angry and resentful about the whole matter because my books had been taken away, and I started sneaking books. And in the end, she ended up giving up within like a few. I think it was about like 6 weeks because she realized like I was going to keep reading no matter what, and that keeping me away from books wasn't a good idea. And as I said to her later on at the time, I said, look, yeah, I read a lot of books and there's probably some truth that it's a safety mechanism, but this is my way of being comfortable with myself socially. And it's where I'm at. And forcing me to try and be social when I'm not ready to be social isn't going to work. And hey, case in point, I have a very active social life and I've had a very active social life for many years. I learned how to become more social as time went on. I just wasn't ready at the time. Could it be true then that men are using video games as a way of avoiding being social, a way of avoiding connection, things like that? Sure, absolutely. There is some real truth to the idea that sometimes somebody will play a game or get into something because there they have control over that environment, or at least a lot more control. Yet I would argue as well that in a very real sense, if somebody is spending their time playing all the time, it's probably because part of them has felt starved for play on some level. And as a man, I can attest to that because when I was a kid, I had to grow up fast in a lot of ways. I didn't get to have a childhood where I got to play all the time. When I was living with my dad, I most certainly didn't. When I came and visited my mom every so often, I would have occasions where I got to play for a little while. And I'd spend a fair amount of time playing. And I eventually outgrew playing with action figures and things like that because it wasn't something that really interested me anymore at a certain point. But what stood out to me about the whole experience is that it did take me some time to really get to that place because a large part of the time I was expected to clean the house, to help out, to do all these other things. And some people might say, well, that's not abnormal. And I'd say, no, when it wasn't abnormal, unless, of course, you were expected to do it all the time and it was used as a way of punishment and discipline along with beatings and everything else, then yeah, I'd say there might be something wrong with that. A lot of times I had to be an adult. I had to keep emotions to myself. I had to do all the other things. So when I look at this concept of men playing, what I really find is that men need a sense of being able to connect with their childhood. And a lot of the reasons why they get caught up in playing is because they're trying to establish a sense of play in a way that it doesn't come at their own expense. It doesn't come at the expense of their happiness and their joy. Now, part of rechilding ourselves is being able to give to the child that healthy sense of play and connection that ultimately brings men to a place where they are able to grow in all the ways that are important. And what do I mean by that? Well, like I said, for a long time I played video games, and I played video games as a way to numb myself. I didn't want to deal with some of the things in my life that I was going through at the time. What I found is that when I started really doing a deep dive into men's work, my desire to play video games substantially decreased. Why? Why did I suddenly decide that I didn't want to play video games as much? Well, part of it was because I was busy doing this deep inner work on myself, and there was this part of me that was kind of like, I'm ready to grow up. I'm ready to change some things here. Again, I want to be very clear. Playing video games doesn't mean that you're not growing up, okay? It just meant that for me, the amount of time that I spent playing video games was changing. I started finding that I would spend a lot of evenings reading books or going out and doing activities or connecting with my community and doing other things. And I found that my avenues for play changed significantly. For example, when I would go to my martial arts community and start practicing kung fu, I was getting together and having a sense of play with people there. That was a form of play for me. I think that really what ends up happening is that men need to experience an evolution of play that still allows them to connect with their inner child and allows them at the same time to discover what it's like to have play in healthy and fun ways with other men. If the only experience you have with other men is play where men have basically where other men are competitors, then you don't aren't going to want to play all the time. And a lot of my experiences growing up were basically of competitive play, but not competitive play in the sense of being part of a team or anything along those lines. It was more like I was the odd kid out, and people weren't all that enthused about playing with me because I wasn't as maybe necessarily as athletic, or certainly I wasn't as popular or any of those other things. Not a wonder then that like I turned, for example, toward video games where nobody was going to reject me. Play comes in many different forms. And part of how we do our quote unquote men's work isn't just reparenting ourselves, as I shared in a previous video. It's also rechilding ourselves. It's giving our child the experiences he needed to have in order to grow up in a healthy and empowering way. When men have those kinds of experiences occurring, it gives them a model for moving through the world that is ultimately much healthier and better for them than what they experienced outside of the world. I think a lot of times the challenges that men have is that they are ultimately missing out on that healthy bonding they needed to have. So if we need to have that healthy bonding, we need to connect with other men in a great way. It's not enough to just go and sit in a circle and talk about men's issues. That's important. Don't get me wrong, that is very important. And men need that. And sometimes those men's circles need to turn into men's play. It doesn't have to always be work. Like, when was the last time that, for example, you went and you threw a frisbee with other men, or threw a ball, or went and did some martial arts, or did some other things? These are things that are important. These activities are grounding and healthy. And I think it's really important to create an experience with other men where it's also not necessarily going to be done in a way where men are going to experience a ton of pain. For example, there's one men's organization that I've gone to some events for, and one of the things they do is boxing. And when I first got involved, I was kind of on board. I thought it was fun and interesting. And then I remember having an experience where I fractured a rib. I didn't feel a sense of brotherhood with the man who fractured my rib. I just felt a lot of anger and resentment, because when we were fighting, he went all out, and it wasn't in a spirit of play. It was in a spirit of, I'm going to fuck this guy up because I have issues on the inside that need to come out. And I think that it's really important to recognize that when we do our experience of play, we do it from the right place. There's something about gauging that and understanding it and recognizing it that is essential. Healthy play doesn't necessarily mean we have to fuck someone up in the process. There's got to be a sense of competitiveness, and there might be an experience of pain, but it shouldn't come at the cost of someone's health for a period of time. It was definitely a wake-up call for me that perhaps what I really needed to do was look carefully at the kinds of play that I was getting involved in and ask myself, is this healthy play? Or is this just another form of play that's unhealthy, that's being used in a way that isn't necessarily moving in the right direction? When I look at playing with other men, I want to be able to experience the fact that we can truly, safely come together. So I think that is what we're all seeking. And don't get me wrong, doing this work can be at times dangerous. But I remember another experience I had with another organization. The workshop was how to be a danger but not dangerous. And we did a lot of physical exercises with other men. We weren't trying to fuck each other up. And I remember one point I was doing an exercise with one guy where we were squatting together, then we were doing burpees together, we were doing some other things together, and we were moving at the pace of the slower person, which in this case was me. But I felt a strong bond of connection with that man as we were going through. I felt supported by him. And I felt like in some ways I supported him as well. We had realization. So there's a difference there. Was there some pain? Sure, there was. But there wasn't pain where I was basically living with it for the next month or so and not being able to do all the activities I wanted to be able to do. So there's a really important thing to note around this concept of exploring men's work through physical activity, men's work through play. And that concept is really like, let's do that, and let's do it in a way that is truly safe, sane, and consensual. Let's understand how important it is to be safe in this play. Let's not go and fuck each other up just because we can. If I want to play, I want to be able to play in a way with another man where I can meet that man. We can meet each other. So, going back to what I used before, I had the one experience where I stepped into the boxing ring and I ended up getting a fractured rib, which was not fun. And I had the other experience where I'm exercising with another man. We're doing lunges, we're doing burpees. And it's a little painful in the moment, But I got through to the other side, and I wasn't stuck with any lasting pain. I had sore muscles for a couple days, not the end of the world. And there was an experience of play. The difference between healthy play and unhealthy play comes in a couple different ways. Unhealthy play can be addictive play. It's, I've got to play to numb myself. I'm playing in order to avoid what's going on in the world around me. I'm playing to get away from my life. Again, this shows up sometimes with video games, not all the time, but sometimes. It can show up in other forms of play. It could be over-exercising. It could be other things along those lines. And then the other version is really like, are we playing from a space where we're genuinely collaborating and connecting and trying to encourage each other? Are we, in some form or another, are we playing to fuck each other up? And let me be clear, there can be like team sports, like you could be competing against another team, okay? And again, there's the chance that you could get fucked up by somebody there. But there's still that sense that you've got your team there to look out for you, support you, and connect with you. There's a sense of community there. Again, play taken to any extreme can be unhealthy. But part of our reach-outing process is actually introducing healthy play. We need to have that experience of healthy play. And I would argue that we can't successfully reparent our inner boys without also reach-outing them, giving them that sense of play, giving them that sense of growth and evolution and change through play, because that's what play is designed for. When our experience of play is stunted in our childhood, we have lost an essential component of growing up. We've lost an essential component of healthy masculinity. And this is why with men's work, where there's so much emphasis on the seriousness of men's work, I think that in some ways men's work has gone the wrong way. It's lost something essential in that exploration. What it's lost is it's lost the sense of genuine evolution and growth through fun. So, okay, I get into a circle with other men and I'm talking about all my woes and problems and everything else. Okay, I get it. But can we also have time for or can we have a place for a well-timed dick joke so that everyone can laugh about it? I think that's great when it happens. And I would say there are some men's organizations and so experiences where that happens, but there are some where it doesn't happen as much. There's so much emphasis on like archetypical work, for example. I'm gonna write a post about this at some point in the near future, but there's so much emphasis on archetypical work. So, for example, it's like king, warrior, lover, magician, and I guess you could say like lover and magician are kind of the place for play. But here's the thing that I kind of want to even look at with that is like, how much is that focus on the archetypes actually probably diminishing our ability to connect with our inner child because we're so focused on categorizing that experience and we're not introducing an element of play into it that we need to have. So, okay, I've talked for a while here, and you might be wondering, all right, Taylor, this is great. You're talking about the importance of reach outing. Oh, I get it, all that good stuff. But how do I actually implement this into your life? Well, here's a suggestion I have for you. Pick out some activity that's fun for you to do with somebody else. Emphasis that it needs to be with somebody else. And commit to going out and doing it. Maybe it's going for a jog with a friend. Maybe it's playing a video game with a friend. Or a board game or something else. But do it with the idea that you're actually doing it to healthily bond with somebody else. So the criteria here is you can't do it alone, okay? You have to actually do it with somebody else. Why? Because healthy play is socialized play. It is, and by socialized, I'm not talking about like socialized conformity here. I'm talking about just like, hey, let's get together and laugh. Let's have some fun. Let's talk as we're playing a video game about something that's going on in our lives, or let's just talk about silly stuff. I mean, some of the best conversations I have is sometimes just playing a game where we're just laughing and talking and joking, and it doesn't have to be all serious. I'm still bonding with that man. Could be throwing a ball or a frisbee or could do something else, but that's what I want to encourage you to do. When's the last time that you went out with another man or the woman for that matter. I mean, I don't really care, but like, when's the last time you went and you played? You threw a ball or a frisbee, or you went for a jog, or you did something fun, or you did exercises together, or whatever. That's my challenge for you today. Go out and do something fun, guys. Because we need that. We need more fun in our lives. And without that fun, we are losing out on something essential to this quote unquote men's work process. We're losing out on connecting with our inner child and giving him the chance to grow up at his pace in a way where it's actually said, hey, you're allowed to be a kid and you're allowed to grow up through that process and discover what it means to become a man through that process of healthy and happy and joyful play. Too many men aren't playing anymore. Let's bring that back into this work. Let's turn some of that work into something fun. We need it. It is part of healthy initiation, and it doesn't have to come at a huge cost. It can just be the simple enjoyment of getting together with other men or other people, period. I don't really care, like whatever you want to do, but getting together with other people and having fun. All right. If this episode moved you, please leave a comment. Subscribe to the Men's Mysteries either on here, on Substack, or on YouTube. And share your thoughts. What you think? I think that, and tell me what you did. If you did something fun, tell me about it. I'd love to hear about it. I'd love to hear what kind of fun you had. All right. Thank you, brothers. Thank you, everyone else. Take care. Much love to you.